Hi, and welcome to Be More Now. My name is Blake Moore, and tonight I'm interviewing author, philanthropist, and spiritual teacher J Jaye Gold. We'll be discussing his latest book, his lifelong studies and world travels, as well as his insights on how subtlety, humor, perspective, and an understanding of group dynamics can help us come to terms with today's fast-paced, technology-filled culture. J J, also known as Justin Gold, has lived a bold and varied life. As a young man in New York, his early interests included boxing, poker playing, and breezing thoroughbreds. He has owned restaurants, done financial consulting, built houses, and raised children. His biggest passion, however, has been the exploration of consciousness and inner freedom. Justin has dedicated the past 40 years to the study and dissection of the micro moments of human behavior in the aim of uncovering the naturalness and beauty that lies buried in all of us. He makes use of subtlety, humor, perspective, and group dynamics, using tools he specially creates for people living in our fast-paced, technology-filled culture. He is the founder of the Center for Cultural and Naturalist Studies, a California nonprofit organization that offers disaster relief in the U.S. and works with underprivileged children worldwide. The group normally undertakes one extended service trip a year, but had to postpone their trips due to the pandemic. So while under COVID lockdown at home, Justin spent much time going through photos of past trips, and this led to the creation of The Currency of Moments, comprised of 80 color photographs overlaid with a sentence or two that pairs the spirit of words with each image. All the photos in the book were taken by Justin or his friends during social work or adventure trips during the last 35 years, from the tip of South America to the Arctic Circle, and from Cambodia to California, traveling both east and west.
Justin, J Jaye Gold, it's really a pleasure to have you here with me on Be More Now.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
So why don't you talk a little bit about your background and who you are and what you do?
Right. I started what you might call teaching, or at least being a spiritual friend, back in the early 1980s in Santa Barbara. And I have people that I have worked with for years and trying to identify and leave behind the obstacles to being free and natural and conscious people. We've gone to numerous places, and most recently we spent a few months in Cambodia, before that in Thailand, and before that in Mexico, and before that really all over, and try to, wherever we are, even if it's a pleasure trip, to find some way that we can interact with the people in some giving way. We have made it part of our focus to look for situations where there are children in need, and we have built in Cambodia. We built an addition to a birthing clinic, which was definitely in need, because the mothers, after they gave birth, got right onto their motorcycle, the back of their motorcycles with their babies, and took off, and that was not a realistic situation for health. So we built that, and we built a building in Thailand, which was for raising and producing silk from silkworms. And that we built that because the village that we were involved in, the women there were involved in a lot of poverty, and were having to go down to Bangkok to get involved in the sex trade to even support themselves and their families. So one possibility for getting out of that situation was to develop an industry. So we built this building for them. We had a trip not long ago to the country of Georgia, which is a pretty remote place, and we found a community there that was in need, and found some way to interact with them. So whatever the need is of the place, we do plug into it. I've found that not so much in my personal style, but that it's really one of those enriching things. And if it's not part of a spiritual quest, I think there's really something missing, because we, especially myself, so fortunate, and without passing it on, there's something definitely missing.
Well, so you written many books. You want to talk a little bit about the books you wrote? And then I know you have a brand new book that you just came out with that I believe you wrote it since you couldn't do some of the things you would normally do during COVID hiatus we've all taken from our normal lives.
I wanted to see if I could do a little more of the kind of writing that I have really valued. And that's not so much writing how-to books or only idea books, but burying ideas in a story. So I wrote an adventure travel book and try to bury some of my ideas in that. And then I thought that went really well, and I really loved that book. That's called Highway of
Diamonds, an international travel adventure. Yes.
Yes. So I wrote that, and I really appreciate fairy tales, because a fairy tale tells you a story, and you can extract whatever is within your capacity to extract. There are, Lost Horizon and Mount Analog and so many Hermann Hesse books are stories where there is a deeply meaningful underlying story there, but it's buried. And I liked books like that. In this last year, as you said, we've all had really unique circumstances, and so instead of traveling, which we would have done, certainly we got a projector that you can project a really big picture on the wall. So we had our own kind of little movie theater, and we started looking at our old photos, which is always exciting to do, looking at your own photos.
How many years worth of photos would you say?
I'd say probably 30, maybe a little more. Back to the 1980s, to trips to North Africa and Peru. And so looking at those pictures was interesting to me, because there were two things that I could do. I could say, oh, remember that. But the actual pictures evoked some ideas in me, some sayings in me, some wisdom and words in me. So I started to try to put the wisdom of the wise words together with the pictures, and I ended up with this concept of what I'm calling quotographs, a quote on a photograph. And not necessarily an arbitrary quote, but a quote that's evoked by the picture in the photograph. And so I was playing with that. I had no idea whatsoever what it would be, and I started putting some of those photographs on Facebook or Twitter. And then after I got a whole bunch of them, somebody suggested, hey, we should put this together and have it available for people. So that's my...
And the name of that book is The Currency of Moments.
Yes, Currency of
Life
Moments.
Anomalies through images and ideas.
I called it Currency of Moments because I think that's an area that's really misunderstood by people. Currency is like something of value, and moments are something of value, and pictures are always of moments. Pictures can't be more than a moment unless it's a moving picture. And so all these pictures are pictures of moments, and so it expresses the currency of moments, that there's value in moments, and sometimes it's hidden beneath the surface, but there is value in moments. And so I came up with that title, which I think is appropriate for the book.
Yeah, it's a great book. And then I also love that you called it Quothograph, and this idea that there's a quote with every picture, and the quote is almost as if it's the doorway that opens up perhaps the story.
Yes, that's right.
Do you want to dive into the book a little bit? I think one thing on the opening page of the book, you say that the common denominators as humans outnumber our differences. And I feel like right now that is so important for us to focus on. And curious, what made you pick this message as the opening to the book?
Well, I think I put on the back of one of my other books a saying that I use, that I believe is that pride separates us, and it really doesn't matter what pride it is. If I had, I'm proud of what I've written, but that means that it still is somewhat of a separating element. And anything that we're proud of, if we're proud of being talented, we're proud of being beautiful, we're proud of being wealthy, if we're proud of being flexible, if we're proud of have any strength whatsoever, that means we are and somebody else isn't. And that's just the way it is. It's going to be that way. If we're proud that we're athletic, It really doesn't matter. And there's nothing wrong with those prides, but they are separating. They are separating elements and will continue to be. They're not evil, but they're separating elements. Even the idea that one person is white and one person is black and one person is female and one person is male is a separating element, and it's fine that it's there, but it is a separating element. But the fact is that in being a human being, in being proud of human being, which is a pride that we never hear, we really never learn it. I never learned it, and I never hear it, to be proud of being a human being. Not a white human being, not a black human being, not a male human being, not a talented human being, not a rich human being. The pride of being a human being is totally not separating between human beings. And so I feel that like as a mantra. So I came up with a picture of two people from totally different worlds on a trip that I was on. And one is a Western lady, and one is a Tuareg tribesman, and the picture is a beautiful picture on the sands of the Sahara Desert, and there's a wind blowing, and they're both standing in this wind, and they're bundling up. And I say in this quote that something like that when there's a chill wind, we all bundled up, no matter what different world we come from. When there's a chill wind, we all bundle up. The other person is a Tuareg North African tribesman, the people who live in the Sahara Desert, and they dress blue. They dress in blue. They dye their clothes with indigo and dress frequently in blue. And I've got to spend some time there, so I have some familiarity with those people. And they were traveling with us on this trip, and had different ways, certainly different ways of eating, and were very concerned about what we ate, that it wasn't good for them, and we were very concerned about what they ate, that it wasn't good for us. But when it came to the chill wind, we all bundled up.
Good way to start the book, and what a beautiful way to put it, too, because it really ties everything in. And it just keeps going from there. I mean, turning the page to the next page, you say playing is the natural expression of our relative size and importance in the creation. And you've got children on a playground. It's just this, whether we deprive ourselves of playing by taking ourselves too seriously or are prevented from playing by external circumstances, when it becomes available to us, we rush to it.
Yeah, that picture is one of my favorites because it took place in Thailand, dealing with Burmese refugees who come over the border, the Thailand border, in a place called Mesat, and for safety, because it's dangerous on their Burmese side of the border, and it's even more dangerous now because there's difficult times happening in Myanmar, which is Burma. But all these kids were living right across the border in Thailand, and we were doing some building on their school, and so we had the idea. They had no idea what playground equipment was. Basically, they played with what they could scrape together to play with. So we found a metal fabricator in town, and we drew pictures of what we wanted them to weld together. And they had never seen anything like that either. So we put together a seesaw and a sliding pond and some different things, and we set it up, and then we turned the kids loose. And you can see by that picture how fascinating it was to the kids. And some of the kids have been really traumatized and have lost family. Very difficult and sometimes very quiet. But when we set up that sliding board, they rush to it, and so that's the essence of that photograph and that saying that we're all really in the same place. We do love to play. Playing is natural to us, and when we have the opportunity, we play. Every once in a while, you see a moment when somebody lightens up and the other person lightens up as well. And wouldn't it be wonderful if a lot of that lightening up happened a little more often?
one thing that I just want to point out about the picture is that the kids are just all smashed into each other, trying to get as close to that ladder so they can climb up the slide as possible. I mean, literally, they're almost like one huge human. They are, and there's just, you really feel that lack of fear. You know, my experience, my travels with Thai people is intimacy comes more naturally than, say, a lot of Western people. There's this is my space, that is your space, do not cross it. And it's that freedom that you feel, that physical freedom, really comes through in this photograph. You also have another one that I was touched by. It's on page 6, and you say world travel provides a unique classroom, and when we see what other cultures have developed, we can marvel at the scope of human creativity. And I know you've traveled a lot and you've been exposed to different cultures. Do you want to elaborate on that?
I do. That picture is a perfect example. I'll describe the picture a little bit. It's a picture of something called water puppets, and it's something that I found in the theatrical form in Hanoi in North Vietnam, not that long ago, not during the difficulty between North and South Vietnam, but maybe 6 or 7 years ago, that this particular dynamic was obviously invented there because I'd never seen it anyplace else. But the puppets are on water, and the people who are manipulating the puppets are behind a screen but operating through underwater, and very difficult to describe, but the puppets are beautiful and the scene is beautiful and the music is beautiful, and really it would be difficult to watch these water puppets without having your mouth hang open, because whoever thought of puppets happening on water, you know, and with the people operating them from under the water. So I thought that was a good example because it was so out there and without traveling. And it certainly is a privilege to be able to travel to that degree and to expect everybody, you know, people are under financial difficulties and people are under physical limitations, and that level of travel isn't available. But certainly there's so much video available. There's so many accounts of people traveling, and so much exposure is possible to cultures, to other cultures, that I think that my education was really short, or maybe even devoid of that valuation. That seeing what other people have done and what other people do, and even the efforts that people make to get the basics, you know, to get water and to get electricity and to get some comfort and some good health and comfort. How creative people are in countries that are less developed is really fascinating to see, and I see that without seeing that and being aware of it and reading it and being exposed to it, it would be very difficult to think that a country as huge as the United States, with so much nature and so many diverse areas, isn't the way it is everywhere. And it isn't the way it is everywhere. As you say, there are other cultures that have very different standards of even proximity between people. And one would not know that. And even being exposed to languages that are different helps us to see that the words that we attach to things are just language. They're words that we put to things. The things themselves have a lot of different words in a lot of different countries and a lot of different languages. And we start to think that our words are the things that we're seeing, and they're really not. They're just language. And I don't think I would have realized that from just studying French in high school. It took me being exposed to a lot of different languages and also seeing how the essential connection people can make with only a basic 20 words of a foreign language. And I would advise anybody, I would give this advice without reservation to anybody traveling to to a country where their language was different, learn some words in that language, and your experience will be considerably different than if you hadn't learned those words. Maybe I could mention a couple of pictures so that people don't get the idea that the book is all saccharine, because I have some controversial things in there, and I'm glad to put them in there because I know that there are some things that I say that people definitely would take exception to. And so I have some photographs in there in the book that are like that. And a lot of media now is moving toward the sweeter you are, the more reception that you'll get. And certainly some of this and some of what I put forth is sweet, but some of it is challenging, and I think it would have to be challenging because human life is not that even that we can avoid recognizing that it's challenging. So I have a couple of one that I mentioned. Since you mentioned Japan, I was in Japan and I was witnessing a ritual, and the ritual was extraordinarily impeccably done. And there's a beautiful photograph in the book of the ritual, and I put a saying on top of that ritual, which I'm sure was popular in some ways but unpopular in others, that very frequently the more people perfect the ritual, the further away they get from the essence of the ritual. And I'm not saying that the ritual has no value, but I'm saying that that does happen. And I did see that as a child, and I see that since that there are things that happen in formal religion where people memorize prayers, and really the essence of that prayer is lost, and people memorize prayer books, and the reward goes to the person that's memorized it the best or the most quickly. And so that picture represents, isn't an insult to Japan or Shinto, but it is a statement of my opinion of the value of ritual and how the danger of ritual, because a person can come to feel accomplished in the ritual and lose the essence of the ritual.
That's exactly right, where you kind of forget the ground that you're going for and you just go through the motions of it. It's real easy to do that.
Yeah, I have another one also that probably might be confusing, and it
what
has
page
to
is
do
that
with,
on?
That's the one with the panda bear.
Okay.
There's the panda bear with two ladies, one on either side of the panda bear.
No matter how gently we initiate interactions with one another, we will not accept each other as well-meaning friends until we realize that we view all new interactions as potential danger. From that honesty, we can move on to neutral, then potentially to well-meaning friends.
Yeah, I think that is relatively controversial because people try very hard to be friendly when they want to be friendly. And this picture was taken actually in the zoo somewhere in Asia. I don't remember the zoo, the Taiwan Zoo, and that it looks almost like it could be a real panda. And there was a real panda on the other side of the wall in the cage, but these people are petting a statue of a panda, which looks real cute. It looks like a panda, but it's not. And the idea is the idea of two people being on either side of a bear is a little bit symbolic, because it's not so much that we see each other when we first meet a person, we see that person as an enemy, but we are alert to the danger that it might present to us. So we are alert to the not danger, maybe the potential challenge or conflict or whatever it is, and we're aware of that. We're alerted to that. We sometimes even prepare ourselves to avoid that. And I think not acknowledging that our very first interactions with people are a little bit scary, and especially for some type of people, and for the other type of person, they're scary as well, but those people prepare themselves more or feel more confident. But still below that confidence is an insecurity that, is this going to go well? Are they going to like me? How can I impress them? How can I influence them to think what I want them to think? And all that, in that, we start with that. And if we acknowledge that, I think there's a chance to move on. And people that we've really gotten close to, whether we realize or not, we have gone through that process with. So I'm saying in this saying that, wouldn't it be interesting if we actually recognized in the beginning that that this was a potentially minimally threatening situation, and we could be a little lighter about it and not have to fake our friendliness. What do you think about that?
What comes to mind is how when monkeys meet each other, there's that big fake monkey smile. Like, I'm okay, really okay. Here I am, I'm okay. You know, and there are moments when I have caught myself walking by someone doing the monkey smile as a way of saying, really, I'm safe, I'm not an enemy. And I have really worked hard to not do that I'm a big smiler, and there was a time in my own spiritual practice when I recognized my smile was also something I used to perhaps disarm people or keep myself safe. It was a way to keep myself removed from a situation. And I really had to do that work to make my smile not about that, you know, to really let my smile be what it is from the inside rather than from the outside. And I somehow think what you just talked about speaks to that same honesty on interacting.
Yeah, I hear you. Uh-huh.
I think we have time for maybe one more. Page 18, you pose a provocative question. Is wisdom becoming extinct? So we recognize actual wisdom when we're trained that wisdom is information multiplied by polish of presentation. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's one of my things that I've really studied and observed, and it's an unfortunate manifestation, and it runs very deep. That we really are unaware of the actual depth of that wisdom reflects. I'm even having trouble expressing this in words because we are trained that there's a certain, that facts are very close to wisdom, and if they presented smoothly, that person is reflecting something of depth and value. Now, there certainly is a value for information, and there certainly is a value for polish. But wisdom is a term that I use for expressing something that goes beneath the surface of things. And it's connected very much with personal experience, with relating that personal experience to certain variables by interpreting it through your own filter and your own your own way of looking at the world. And what can come out from that is really more poetry than explanation. So in exploring this question, I have found that the respect and the regard and the recognition of that quality is very close to being lost. And I put on that photograph, I put a picture that I took of a buffalo in Yellowstone National Park, because everybody knows about the extinction of the buffalo. And
right.
And I think that there is a similar extinction happening where our valuation and recognition of the difference between information and polish and wisdom is lacking. So, right. And I say when wisdom becomes extinct, society stagnates. And I think we may be in that situation where we're looking for the smoothest presentation or the cleverest presentation, and we lose the heart that is a necessary function of wisdom, is emotion and feeling and intuition.
Right. Do you have a thought of what we could do to bring that back in our own lives? Someone's personal life.
Well, I think for me, reading has been a big source of differentiating, because I read all kinds of things, and I like clever books, and as I said, I like spy books, but there are some writers, some alive and some not alive, that write, and you really get the feeling that you're reading about somebody's life, and you're reading about somebody who's telling you something that they know and have lived through, and a story of somebody by somebody who has really lived through what they're talking about, whether it's an idea or an experience or a circumstance, that person has actually lived through that something, can be distinguished. And I say that because I feel I have distinguished between those two things, and I appreciate both of them, but I do know the difference. So for us to actually meet people and be able to differentiate in that way, that's challenging, because people have reputation, and reputation is very, very important in our culture. In fact, if you look on the social media, a person with a reputation could be a basketball player, says something about something that has nothing to do with basketball, and 15,000 people respond to that. But then if somebody who really is an expert in that subject, who nobody knows about, says something, 12 people respond, So our culture is very much involved in celebrity, and that's a problem, because celebrity masks this story that we're talking about. And in order to see beneath the surface of celebrity, because there are, of course, celebrities that do know what they're talking about, and not only people like Einstein, who's no longer alive, and the Buddha, who's no longer alive, but there are people alive that really do know what they're talking about, and some of them have not become celebrities. So it's very challenging. I don't have an answer for that, or really a remedy for that, except I would suggest you read my books.
Perfect conclusion to this wonderful interview, and I'll make sure I get the links to everybody. I'm going to put all the links on the page, and I'm just so grateful that you took the time that you did to have this conversation with me.
Okay, my pleasure, certainly.
That about wraps up my interview with author and philosopher J Jaye Gold, otherwise known as Justin Gold. More information about Justin and his latest book, Currency of Moments, can be found at his website, justingold.net.